What do you mean the Master Emerald still holds the Chaos Emeralds inside of it? What do you mean, third movie? We all saw Sonic not only release them into God knows where at the end of the second film, but that they weren't even present among the Master Emerald shards that Knuckles fused back together. Did y'all not watch the ending of that installment? I guess that means I was right all along when I said in my first video about movie 3 that the Master Emerald and Chaos Emeralds were essentially one and the same, and so me reversing that statement in my second video to address all the people telling me I got it wrong the first time was done all for nothing. Thanks guys, I love it here! Anyway, I saw Sonic the Hedgehog 3 in theaters 4 months ago. My original plan was to release a mostly unedited livestream style review before Christmas, but my thoughts were so disorganized and overly emotional that I couldn't subject anyone to my unscripted rambling. So I decided to just write a formal, edited review and publish that in late January once the film would be out on streaming. That way I'd have more access to footage. Then I got bogged down again because I wanted to release my Amy Rose video on Valentine's Day and, Look, your main takeaway should be I can't publish videos on time to save my life. Getting back to Sonic 3, I cannot begin to describe the unbridled joy this film brought me. Half of that joy was watching the disgustingly bloated mega conglomerate that is Disney crash out over their most shameless cash grab to date, potentially losing out to a franchise that shouldn't even be a concern to them in the grand scheme of things. I lived for the messiness. But seriously, as someone who was introduced to the Sonic franchise as a child through the game Sonic Adventure 2, which the third film is based on, I had pretty high expectations, and this movie surpassed and subverted them all. It surpassed my expectation that the animation would be noticeably better than its predecessors by being a visual masterpiece. It subverted my expectations that certain character dynamics wouldn't be expanded on by centering said dynamics in some of the most heartfelt and breathtaking scenes. It surpassed my expectation that our main trio would have their characters remain intact and not flanderized by having them go through genuinely surprising moments of growth. And it subverted my expectation that it would be the best of the trilogy by being totally overrated.
You need to leave!
Okay, calm down, please calm down. Remember all those nice things I said above? I meant every word. Every Sonic fan, hell, anyone who likes movies period should watch this film. But I have to admit that based on the writing / script alone that I was a bit disappointed in movie 3 when I first saw it. But after 2 more full-length viewings and chopping up with other Sonic fans, I can not only precisely pinpoint why it gets beaten out by movie 2 for best entry in the SCU, but why despite all of its flaws, this is still a really, really great film. And that's what I'll discuss in today's video. I'll talk about what I liked and thought was done perfectly, what I didn't like and thought could have been done a lot better, and then wrap it up with some final thoughts. Please remember that these are my opinions. If you disagree, that's fine, just try to be civil in the comments below. Also, take comfort in the fact that I actually watched and paid attention to the movie, unlike some willfully ignorant ghouls out there.
I'm not going to bother explaining the plot of this film in any detail. I wasn't tracking it that closely, to be honest. I was mostly fighting to stay awake.
Humanity is a failed experiment.
Should be able to.
First, I'll summarize the film's plot, that way you know I'm not misrepresenting anything. If you don't care to listen to the summary, click here to this timestamp. And obviously, spoilers ahead. In 1971, a meteorite lands on Earth containing a powerful alien hedgehog named Shadow. Shadow is seized by the Guardian Unit of Nations, or GUN, kept at their top-secret military base, and is subjected to various experiments headed by Professor Gerald Robotnik. Soon, Shadow befriends Gerald's granddaughter, Maria, but in 1974, the Robotniks try to flee with Shadow to avoid Gun taking him into custody. During the pursuit, a Gun soldier recklessly causes an explosion that kills Maria. Gerald is imprisoned, and Shadow is placed in stasis for the next 5 decades. Cut to the year of our Lord 2024, and Gerald, having been released from prison, hacks into Gun's security system to release Shadow, so that the two can avenge Maria. In response, Gun recruits our heroes, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, here in Team Sonic, to help capture Shadow. However, the team not only fails to do this, but their alliance with Gun falls apart when rogue Batnik drones mortally wound Commander Walters, who gives a mysterious keycard to Sonic, and a Gun agent named Director Rockwell blames the team for Walters' death. Team Sonic is then lured to their arch-nemesis, Ivo Robotnik, aka Dr. Eggman, who discovers that someone has hijacked his drones and vows to track the hacker down. Realizing this may be an opportunity to find and apprehend Shadow, the boys make a temporary truce with Eggman. But said truce is broken when Eggman discovers that the hacker is his estranged grandfather, Gerald, who used the drones to lure his grandson. Gerald informs Eggman that he needs his help stealing 2 keycards needed to activate the Eclipse Cannon, a giant space laser Gerald invented to target and destroy any location on Earth, and that is currently in Gun's possession. Eggman joins Gerald, Shadow ambushes and takes the first keycard from Team Sonic, and leaves them to die by being sucked into a miniature black hole, but by the literal skin of their teeth and a ring portal, the team escapes. Out of options and allies, Team Sonic recruits their human adoptive parents, Tom and Maddie Wachowski, to thwart the Robotnik's plot. The team sneaks into Gunn headquarters in London, England to steal the second keycard, fighting with the Robotniks and Rockwell in the process. But when Tom gets the second keycard by disguising himself as Walters, Shadow, mistaking Tom for the deceased commander, gravely wounds him, takes the card, and flees. Furious and terrified that his adoptive father might succumb to his injuries, Sonic abandons his teammates and takes the Master Emerald to use its powers to seek revenge against Shadow. Eventually, Sonic spares Shadow's life once he realizes that revenge isn't the answer. After sharing their stories of losing loved ones, Sonic convinces Shadow that the love for those gone is what matters most, and that you can always choose to do the right thing and fix your mistakes. Only then do Sonic and Shadow team up to stop Gerald's real plan, to use the Eclipse Cannon to destroy the entire Earth as revenge for Maria's death, as opposed to ruling over humanity like Eggman desired. The two Robotniks fight aboard the station, but with the help of Tails and Knuckles, Eggman hurls Gerald into a chaos-filled reactor core, killing him. Team Sonic, Eggman, and Shadow all work together to prevent the cannon's laser beam from hitting Earth, but in the process, the reactor core begins to melt down, while Sonic is weakened out of his super form and plummets to Earth. In the end, Eggman and Shadow sacrifice themselves to move the cannon out of Earth's orbit before it explodes. Before his demise, Eggman broadcasts a farewell video acknowledging his assistant, Agent Stone, and thanking him for his years of friendship. Sonic is saved by Tails and Knuckles, the team reconcile, and Tom recovers from his injuries. The movie ends with two post-credit scenes, the first being Sonic overshooting a race between his teammates and winding up in a New York State park where he's ambushed by an army of robots that look like him, only to be saved by a hammer-wielding female hedgehog, the one and only Amy Rose. The second post-credit scene reveals that Shadow somehow survived the cannon explosion. First, let's talk about what the movie did right. Grab a snack, cause we'll be here for a while. First, the animation and visual effects. I said it before, and I will say it again. This is the best looking movie of the trilogy. The first thing that pops right out are the colors. If there's one tiny problem I had with the first film's visuals, it's how relatively muted the color scheme was. The second film was a noticeable improvement, but the third movie takes it to a whole nother level. The colors are so much livelier and richer. The boy's fur is much brighter and more saturated than in the second film, making them look much more like their game counterparts. Speaking of the boys, I love how expressive and brimming with personality their facial expressions and movements have gotten. In one moment, they can go from the cutest thing on Earth to looking so badass. This also applies to newcomer Shadow, who can go from brooding and menacing to gentle and even vulnerable. Another thing I can't get over is how richly textured and detailed everyone looks. Look at this brilliant red lighting and how it reflects off of Shadow's fur and quills. Look at how lifelike the rainwater is as it pours down on him. Hell, you can sometimes see the blood vessels in the character's eyes. Just so many small details like this that make you want to reach out on the screen and touch them. Then there are the action scenes, which easily blow the previous films out of the water. The scale is grander and the combat is much more intense and visceral. Not to mention the excellent choreography in these scenes. The best example is Sonic and Shadow's race through Tokyo. The two's movements are so breakneck and chaotic, yet fluid and clean, if that makes any sense. I can't decide what moment from this sequence I love the most. Sonic spin dashing underneath cars, trying to knock down Shadow, jumping seamlessly through this poor guy's truck window in slow-mo, or right when the two are about to crash into a blocked off road and it's all over, but then Shadow friggin' teleports himself, the motorbike, and Sonic away from the road just to floating in mid-air before landing. Ah, it's so awesome! It's just incredible how the animation in these films went from, oh my god, ew, 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 oh my god, it's so ugly, to,
And here I thought you cared for them, especially, what's his name? Tom.
And I just wish other studios would look at the Sonic movies and realize you don't need $250 million to have good-looking CGI. You need socialism for that. Nah, but seriously, consider this. Using on average $105 million per film, Paramount can make movies that have amazing looking CG characters, action scenes, and even decent looking sets and costumes for their live action actors. By contrast, you give modern day Disney over $250 million and you get, oh my goodness, what is that? But the animation isn't the only thing that makes the film visually stunning. Another big factor is the direction. Jeff Fowler really brought his A-game in this installment because it has some of the best shots and transitions in the trilogy. There are big in-your-face examples like the aforementioned Tokyo chase, the shot of Knuckles diving to save Sonic and Tails, and way too many shots during the Super Saiyan Hedgehog fight. But there are also smaller, more subtle examples that you can really only appreciate if, like me, you spend hours rotting in front of a laptop screen twiddling with video editing software. Take this immaculate audio transition where Shadow reminisces about Maria and the song End of the Line plays during the flashback. Maria and Shadow meet, bond, comfort each other, and just as the song swells back up again while they look to the stars with so much hope and optimism, bam! Just how abruptly the music cuts out, symbolizing how sudden the tragedy that befell Shadow and Maria was. There's no basic bitch soft fade in to the present of Shadow looking wistfully into the distance, but instead a hard cut to the now colorless, dust-covered record player that Maria used in the flashback. I hate to run this meme further into the ground, but f*** it. Absolute cinema. The soundtrack and score are also great. One common complaint about the trilogy is that despite being based on a franchise that consistently has some of the best music in gaming, there's an inexplicable reluctance to incorporate said music. I personally wouldn't mind if the non-game music used was more interesting. Like, I'm sorry, except for Boom, Where Evil Grows, Speed Me Up, and Stars in the Sky, none of the tracks from the first two films stick out to me, and the actual score of both is even less inspired. Fortunately, movie 3 has memorable banger after memorable banger. Firestarter, London Town, Galvanize, freaking Neon. I don't care what anyone else says. No song from the games would slap as hard with the image of Team Sonic diving into Tokyo at night as much as this song. The actual score of movie 3 also beats out the other two by simply using what is still the greatest song in the history of the franchise. If only it wasn't interrupted by,
Up there? Where? Higher. Left yourself open.
yeah, we'll get to that. Also, as fun as the song Run It is, I don't enjoy it quite as much as Stars in the Sky or Speed Me Up. On to the actual story. Movie 3 is an amazing adaptation of Sonic Adventure 2. While the plot itself is very different, as expected, from that of the game, it manages to bring its most important and compelling scenes to the big screen in a really engaging way. And like the first two films, most of the changes made to certain plot points and characters are for the better. Most of them, but again, we'll get to that. And like I said in my Aged Like Milk predictions video on Movie 3, it keeps true to SA2's original spirit. It does not shy away from SA2's dark subject matter, and nothing about the tragedy of the arc or the themes of revenge and injustice are whitewashed or downplayed. Believe it or not, the thing I expected them to change from SA2's original plot was not that Maria would be killed, but the game's anti-military industrial complex message, and I am so impressed that they didn't. Another theme that's well adapted from SA2 is one I discussed at length in my video about the film's final trailer, the duality between Sonic and Shadow. How, despite their differences, the two hedgehogs have more in common than meets the eye, specifically their temptation and eventual refusal to take revenge. This duality motif can be seen several times throughout the film, but my favorite examples are these companion scenes where Sonic and Shadow are told by their closest family member that it's what's in their heart that matters most.
Because even though you lost her at such a young age, you didn't let your pain change who you are. In here.
You're my friend. And you can do or be anything you want because of who you are in here.
I don't know what I'd do without you.
And that absolutely devastating scene where Shadow critically injures Tom.
Come on, please wake up. Wake up, come on. Wake up.
Maria.
Again, fantastic direction. On to the characters. First, there's the star of the film, the ultimate lifeform himself. This movie did a pretty good job capturing Shadow's most important traits: his fierce loyalty, his existential brooding, his commitment to doing what he thinks is right and just, and most importantly, his sincerity. That he not only has a heart, but that he feels so much. Far from being edgy the hedgy, I think this is one of the more emotionally raw interpretations of Shadow. A lot of that is thanks to not only the script and the dynamic character animation, but Keanu Reeves' performance. Although I do think he could have been a bit better during scenes where Shadow was supposed to be menacing and cavalier, Reeves absolutely sells moments of vulnerability, fear, and melancholy. When he confides in Maria about not knowing what he is or what's his purpose, you really hear how frightened and lost he is. And oh my goodness, when he's just begging to be put out of his misery.
Go ahead. Finish it. What are you waiting for? Do it. I'm right here.
Just hurts to listen to. It's especially painful when paired with this look of relief on Shadow's face as the Eclipse cannon explodes, as if to say, yeah, the job is done, but also, maybe now he can see Maria again? Oh my gosh, Movie 3, did you just twist the knife? All in all, I can't wait to see SCU Shadow in his healing era. He deserves the world. You know who also deserves the world and is the best adapted character in the film? Maria Robotnik. She's perhaps the best example of how drastic changes from the source material can be for the better. I like Maria's character from the games fine enough, but you have to admit that the whole perfect angel who wants to help others even at her own expense shtick can get old, especially since there's not much else to her personality. The film, however, does something quite radical with Maria. Make her a regular kid. Yes, she's still incredibly kind, gentle, and giving, but she's also kind of a little hellion. She's goofy and playful. She teases Shadow and tries to get him to lighten up for once. She raises hell throughout the arc and has no respect for authority. For what might be the first time ever, she gets to act her age. And that's what makes her death a tragedy. It's not that she was this pure-hearted quasi-mother figure to Shadow who never had a bad thing to say about anyone or ever complained no matter how unfair life became. It's that she was a child. She had her whole life ahead of her to learn, explore, and potentially become an even better person, and that was all taken away from her. And yet, because she's fleshed out to be a realistic kid, she finally gets to be more than just the dead girl. Also, Isla Brown, the actress playing Maria, turns in a pretty good performance. Finally, I know it's not important, but I adore Maria's 1970s makeover. Homegirl needed an outfit upgrade for some time now, and I love that the movie's 50 years ago timeline means she gets to glow up in my favorite decade for fashion. On to our returning cast, namely Team Sonic, Dr. Eggman, and Agent Stone. Across the board, their characterizations remain consistent and non-flanderized, which is good because they were already done so well in the past two movies. Sonic continues to be the cool, heroic, and caring goofball who will do anything to protect his family. Jim Carrey's Eggman remains the objective highlight of these films, and this installment is him at his most hysterical. But other characters are expanded on in pretty impressive ways. Tails not only remains courageous and brilliant, but also becomes the heart of Team Sonic, the glue keeping him and his brothers together, and, hilariously enough, the voice of reason despite being the baby of the family. And yes, I am sad that the film axed his greatest moment in not only SA2 but the entire franchise, but since the plot was already split between Sonic, Shadow, and Eggman, it's probably for the best that it was cut. Like I said in my predictions video, here's to seeing a proper Tails arc in movie 4. Knuckles really surprised me because I wasn't expecting much from him in this installment. I knew going in that Sonic's original rival turned friend would take a major backseat to Shadow in this movie, and not just because that's simply how the poor bastard spent his 30th anniversary, unfortunately. But Knuckles not only remains just as fantastic as he was in movie 2, but has one of his best moments in the entire franchise. It's when Sonic demands that Knuckles tell him where the Master Emerald is. The two stare daggers at each other while Tails is pleading with them to calm down like a child of divorce. Then Sonic charges up with chaos energy, ready to throw hands, and Knuckles responds in kind, and everyone in my theater is on the edge of our seats thinking, gosh, we're about to get another epic Sonic vs. Knuckles showdown just like the last time, and then he charges down. He thinks it over and chooses not to fight. Instead, he allows Sonic to take the emerald with a stern insistence that he keep his word and not use it for revenge. I can go on and on about why I adore this scene. Knuckles accepting his role as the responsible big brother who wants to protect Sonic and Tails rather than fight them, his desire to preserve his bond with Sonic even as his brother abandons him. However, the thing I appreciate most is that we rarely get to see Knuckles be so restrained and level-headed. Even before his flanderization in the games, his hot-headedness and urge to fight almost always got him in trouble. Knuckles in movie 2 would have definitely used his fist to solve this problem, but here he realizes he can't and shouldn't punch sense into Sonic this time. He realizes that it's best to stand back and see if his brother will do what's right. It's probably the first time we've seen him be this emotionally mature and thoughtful, and yet it feels earned and natural. And talk about the best line of dialogue in the film.
Part of our oath is to trust each other, and I must abide by that promise, even if you have chosen to break it.
It still gives me chills, especially with Idris Elba's phenomenal delivery. Us Knuckles fans might have gotten the short end of the stick in 2024, but I am so grateful that for his 30th, our boy got to ascend to this level in a mere 2-minute scene. Finally, there's Agent Stone, who started off as simple comic relief, then became one of the SCU's most compelling characters in this film. It's like the screenwriters looked at how fans were joking about the homoerotic undertones of his relationship with Eggman and decided, hey, maybe we should take Stone's unconditional love seriously. In contrast to the first two films, movie 3 spends more time sympathizing with Stone's plight of being inside of a one-sided relationship, as opposed to making fun of it.
We all have a role to play. That's what makes the team so special. That and the fact we're best friends.
You are?
Well, yeah, just like you and Eggman, right?
Yeah. Of course, yes. Me and the doctor. Best of friends. It's definitely what we are.
So when Eggman moves further away from Stone and ultimately abandons him for Gerald, it really hits you in the gut, but not as much as the two's final scene.
This is Dr. Ivo Robotnik, dedicating my final live stream to one very special henchman, Agent Stone.
Man, I know the Super Saiyan Hedgehog fight was a once-in-a-lifetime delight, and I gushed on and on about Sonic and Knuckles' confrontation, but this scene is my favorite in the entire movie. I love everything about it. Eggman's slow and steady march to the cannon center, the hellish swirl of orange chaos energy, Jim Carrey's graceful hand gestures as he stabilizes the core like an orchestral conductor, Lee Majdoub trying so hard not to cry, and most of all, the miserable tragedy behind Eggman's final lines.
If I can't rule the world, I might as well save it for the one and only person who ever cared about me. So, I guess there's only one thing left to say. It's been a real drag. Thanks for nothing.
What gets me about these two lines is not just that he finally reciprocates Stone's affection, is that it also ties back to the trait that defined Eggman since the first film, his unbridled hatred for humanity. He's basically saying, now that my miserable life is over, this final good deed is done solely for the one person that never abandoned me. The rest of you can fuck right off. It's so deliciously succinct, humorous, and misanthropic. I can't get enough of it. Now, some of you might be saying, okay, I don't understand why you said in the beginning that the film was overrated. It sounds like you also think that movie 3 is the 10 out of 10 no-notes masterpiece that everyone and their mother says it is. And I really wish that were the case. Unfortunately, the film is not perfect, far from it. Although it elevates some characters to great heights and is grander in visuals, direction, and scale, movie 3's script is noticeably sloppier than that of its predecessors. Some characters were a complete waste of time, important arcs were undercooked, and there are serious tonal issues that result in the film having less tension than the first two, which is surprising for an SA2 adaptation. The film's first major flaw is how rushed Sonic's revenge arc is. The seeds of it are planted very early, but it's not picked up on or referenced ever again until the third act. Consequently, Sonic's desire for revenge against Shadow feels like it comes out of nowhere. And you can tell as much based on the many TikTok videos poking fun at how much of a 180 Sonic makes from the dumb 14-year-old making movie references to the scorched earth maniac we see in the climax.
Sonic's the name, speed's my gift. Knuckles, if you don't give me that Master Emerald right fucking now, I will end the Echidna bloodline. I just love my dog. Nigga, my brother told me.
Dude, let's kill the horse.
What?
I'm so tired, Finn!
And because it ends as quickly as it begins, his resolution with Shadow doesn't feel very satisfying. Sonic's decision to seek revenge should have been a more gradual process that began much earlier. There should have been at least 2 scenes before the third act where Sonic begins to wonder whether revenge is the only option to stop Shadow and the Robotniks. For example, the first scene could have been right after Commander Walters' assassination via Batnik drones. Sonic could have been deeply affected by the loss because Walters was the first person whom he and his brothers failed to protect, and it reminds him of how he wasn't able to save Longclaw, his former caregiver, in her time of need. So when Tails realizes that Shadow has a connection to the killer drones, Sonic could become more devoted than ever to capturing him and putting him under Gun's boot. To Sonic, that would be quote-unquote justice for Walters. The second scene could have been right after the team is almost killed by a black hole. Sonic could have been even more distraught by nearly losing his brothers and is furious that Shadow was willing to cause Sonic that much pain after he himself experienced something similar with Maria. Not only that, but Sonic becomes increasingly frustrated at just how unstoppable Shadow is, based on how easily he took down the boys in Tokyo and ambushed them at the abandoned base. Consequently, when the Wachowski family is planning the heist in London, Sonic doesn't immediately turn down Maddie's suggestion to use the Master Emerald, like what happens in the actual film, but instead seriously considers it because he's desperate to finally beat Shadow. However, Knuckles shuts that down immediately, and after a tense back and forth between the two, Sonic reluctantly agrees not to use the Emerald. After those 2 scenes, then you have Shadow critically wound Tom, and Sonic deciding that this third offense is the final straw. Sonic is now fully convinced that using the Master Emerald for revenge is the only option. By including these extra scenes, Sonic's revenge arc would span from the first act to the climax, instead of it spanning just the first 10 minutes of the third act. It would feel more substantial and its eventual resolution more satisfying. You would have to extend the runtime, but honestly, this movie would have greatly benefited from being just as, if not longer than the second film. Also, to properly convey how much Shadow disrupted Sonic's peace of mind, you'd definitely have to tone down or completely remove some scenes in the second act where Sonic, despite the gravity of the situation, is still making pop culture references and joking around.
Well, I gotta take in the sights. Paul, John, George, the other one!
That brings us to another major issue with the film, its excessive use of silly humor. Like, remember that scene from the second movie where Sonic reunites with Longclaw's ghost? Remember how she faded away and left Sonic a single feather and he begs her not to go, but to no avail? The room goes dark, sad music builds, Tails sympathetically stands aside to let Sonic grieve, and then...
So is that... your dad?
Ugh. Yeah, well, take that scene, crank up the frequency, and you've got the third film. There are so many moments where the tension and stakes of certain scenes get deflated by gags, pratfalls, or pop culture references. Letting Team Sonic sit with the fact that they were almost killed by a black hole? Nah, let's just throw in a product placement joke.
Somebody better call Google Maps.
Letting the heist planning scene play out straight after we just had a laughing fest with the Robotniks and Stone in the previous scene? Nope, the scene would be a lot better with a supposedly funny puppet. And it just goes on and on like this. There's Sonic's aforementioned tour of London, that super cringe squandering of a Rachel cameo, the SCU's resonant punching bag once again disrupting an emotionally heavy scene involving Sonic and one of his brothers, etc, etc. I know people are going to say, well, there needs to be silly jokes in some dark and serious scenes, otherwise the movie would be no fun. And I agree. For example, I don't care how nonsensical the Robotnik's dance scene is, considering the danger and limited time they have to steal the keycard. It's iconic and I love it. The problem is that these goofy moments, some of which are not nearly as funny as the galvanized dance scene, happen in way too many scenes that are supposed to be played straight. Consequently, the third film's tone is all over the place sometimes, and you never really feel like the characters are in any real danger. And I know the first two films also had silly, stupid moments and jokes that eased the tension, but I'd argue that they were not as frequent as with this movie. It becomes especially annoying during the climax when the film's most intense and anticipated moments are interrupted for more gags. Like, people rightfully talk about Rachel's wedding scene bringing the second movie to a screeching halt, but at least scenes like Sonic and Knuckles' final fight, their reconciliation on the beach, and the whole team's standoff with the Death Egg isn't suddenly interrupted by
I will not try to stop my elders from destroying the world!
The script written in gold, everyone. And there's no greater embodiment of this problem than Gerald Robotnik, a flaw all within himself. I hate how they adapted him. How do you take one of the most tragic and compelling villains of the entire Sonic franchise and turn him into this absolute clown? Gerald's characterization in this film is basically a lesser version of Eggman. He has all the qualities that make Eggman great comic relief, but none that make him a great villain as well. And that's because he spends so much time telling jokes or being the butt of them, he never becomes a credible threat. Except for when he reveals his true intentions with the Eclipse Cannon, you never feel like anyone is in any real danger whenever Gerald is in the room. Unlike with, say, Eggman in the first two films, there's no showmanship, next to no dominating over other people, nothing menacing or threatening to remind you that this guy is a force to be reckoned with. The closest Gerald comes to this before the climax is his portable black hole, which he doesn't even deploy, and when his badniks kill Walters. But because Gerald's introduced well after that scene, and there's no real animosity shown between the two men, the ambush feels more random than representative of how dangerous Gerald is. Otherwise, the film constantly treats Gerald like an elderly, less intimidating version of his grandson. And because he's not taken seriously as a villain, his eventual betrayal of Eggman feels kind of forced. Like, seriously, if you didn't already know the plot of SA2, would you have seriously bought that this guy—
You go get it, grandson! Hey!
Yeah, that guy wanted to and was capable of ending all life on Earth. In fact, it's after he betrays Eggman that Gerald is at his worst as a villain. It's not just that his fight with Eggman interrupts the Super Hedgehog scene twice, but the fight itself is so lame. It has next to no grit or tension because Gerald and Ivo keep trading gags that should have ended up on the cutting room floor.
Set up defense! Damn you, autocorrect! That's what I call mentascaping. That's elder abuse. A nanofist. I haven't seen that since I hate-watched Green Lantern in 2011.
I was saving it for Comic-Con, but now there won't be a Comic-Con! Is everything a joke to you?
And you can tell just how little respect the filmmakers have for Gerald as a villain by the fact that they gave him what is simultaneously the worst yet most fitting villain death I have ever seen in a film.
Who said life was pointless?
You did.
So, in case my tone didn't make it clear, Gerald is by far the film's biggest fumble. What I realized after my second viewing is that the movie is at its best before Gerald's introduction and after his death. Dark, emotionally tense scenes are played straight, each character is taken seriously, the few jokes present are a friggin' riot, and once Gerald is farted into oblivion, the climax instantly becomes a million times better. It's such a shame because bringing Gerald back to life while he still has the same game plan from SA2 is an excellent idea. The orphaned Eggman finally meeting a family member that seems to love and value him, only for them to exploit him for their selfish desires and then discard him like everyone else did in his life. Not only is that brilliantly heartbreaking, but it's a compelling twist that the franchise's master manipulator is out-manipulated in such an underhanded, slimy way. And that's how the film should have approached Gerald. Instead of being a one-note geriatric version of Eggman's comedic side, they should have played up Gerald's deceitful and emotionally manipulative nature. His best scene in the entire movie is when he's trying to convince his grandson that blowing up the Earth is a good thing because
all your life you've been rejected by this world. You have nothing down there. No one who cares about you.
But I have you now.
We're family. We have each other.
Oh, Ivo. You're no Maria.
Ooh, that's cold. By contrast, Eggman could have played the goofier, more lighthearted side of the duo, because he's just so happy to finally be around his family. This not only makes the two a compelling foil to one another, but allows Eggman to be emotionally vulnerable to Gerald's exploitation. Furthermore, the Robotnik's shared misanthropy should have been touched on from the very beginning of the film. Instead of their first meeting consisting of what sounds like a bunch of rejected Big Bang Theory jokes, Gerald should have assuaged Eggman's anger at being orphaned by explaining that they should team up to take revenge on those who destroyed their family. And although the VR headset scene is really funny, it probably would have been better for Gerald's character if he and Eggman bonded over how much they hated society. The latter declaring how much better the quote-unquote chaotic human machine, to borrow one of his phrases from the prequel comic, would run under the two's command, and Gerald deceitfully agreeing, hiding his true intention to his grandson while relaying it to Shadow. Finally, I was very disappointed with director Rockwell. All that hype around Kristen Ritter being cast only for her character to be such a non-entity. Rockwell starts the film promisingly enough. She's a member of an organization tasked with neutralizing aliens, is prejudiced against them, and is committed to imprisoning both Shadow, the Robotniks, and Team Sonic. But then she completely disappears after Walter's death, reappears during the heist to stop both Team Sonic and the Robotniks from stealing the keycard, is tricked by Tom into giving it up, and once again falls off the face of the earth, never to be mentioned for the rest of the film. Aside from reluctantly recruiting the boys to capture Shadow and kicking off the world's silliest zero-gravity game, Rockwell does nothing to drive the plot forward. You can cut her out of the movie or replace her with any random gun official and not much would change. It also doesn't help that, aside from snark, Rockwell has no definable personality or compelling motivation. We never find out why she distrusts aliens, despite her feelings coming off as more personal than just wanting to abide by Gunn's mission statement. To make Rockwell a more substantial character, I would have at least given her a backstory explaining that she or someone she cares about was victimized by aliens. For example, she could have been good friends with Agent Willoughby from The Knuckles Show, who was also a Gunn employee and disapproved of the organization's slapdash approach to containing aliens. In this film, Rockwell could have stated that she hasn't seen or heard from Willoughby since the latter quit Gunn and correctly assumes that an alien was involved in her disappearance. For another example, one of Rockwell's parents could have been another casualty in the raid that killed Maria 50 years ago, which Walters indirectly blamed on Shadow's alien powers. Yet, despite how blah she was in this film, I really hope Rockwell returns and is given more to do, because she has so much potential to be a great secondary villain. I really want to see future films use her to explore the theme of prejudice and repression of aliens that's been building up since at least the second film. So you're probably thinking, wow, this movie must really piss me off. It's so close to being perfect, yet falls so short in some areas. But believe it or not, I was a lot more negative when I first saw it. I even thought the script was so sloppy compared to its predecessors that the first movie was easily better. After all, isn't the script the most important part of a movie? However, after sitting down, processing my thoughts, and looking like a total jackass while arguing with other Sonic fans on Reddit, I realized that I got way too swept up in the hype and had such high expectations that I forgot to appreciate the final product. Once I let all that go and saw it in theaters a second time, I enjoyed myself a lot more. Moral of the story, don't do what I did. Don't let hype and expectations cloud your theater experience and just try to relax. You will have a lot more fun than I did. So, do I still think the third film is overrated? Kind of, but only by the slimmest margin. Despite its flaws, I'm mesmerized by the many things this film does well each time I watch it. I know the tone is messy, I know the villain sucks, I know Sonic's story could have used one more rewrite, but not only does movie 3's script succeed with most of the other characters and conflicts, but everything else from the action to the music to the visuals is just done so phenomenally well. And that's ultimately why, despite the first movie's tighter script, great villain, and well-paced character arcs, I can't in good conscience rate it above the third film. That's because I will always appreciate a grander, more ambitious project that succeeds in most areas over a smaller, safer project that gets almost everything right. But yeah, there's no way I'm putting movie 3 above movie 2. 2 has 1 and 3's strengths with little to none of their weaknesses. Its script is grand and ambitious while also being tight and focused, save for one scene. The animation is spectacular, all the characters and arcs are the best in the trilogy, and Stars in the Sky is still the greatest single to come out of a movie ever. Final rating, 7.8 out of 10. Like and subscribe, share around the video because it helps the channel grow. Stay tuned for more, and I'm just so glad that I finally got this friggin' review out.